Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I am really excited about today's guest, like really excited. I've been researching you, Carina, and this is so out of anything I understand. To give you guys a little preview, Carina is a surface pattern and craft designer turned CEO, and she teaches hobbyists to make money as designers. She was a former university professor. She has a PhD from University of Minnesota and creative director of a scrapbooking company, Cartabella Paper Company. And her expertise led her to build a multi-million-dollar brand in 2 years. And this is all just out of my sphere of knowledge. I am not a crafty person at all. My daughter, let me tell you, she is crafty like none other. And she is taking a sewing class, which lights up her life. And I just sit there. It's like one of those instances as a mom where you're just like, I cannot relate. Not for like my mother is very crafty. And she tried and she really did. And that's just not me. So I'm super excited. Went on a little tangent there. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
For our audience, don't forget, use the code podcast and you get $100 off corporate to contract core, which is my self-paced course on how to become a high-end freelancer, making more money and getting more time in your life. Let's just talk about thinking back. If you could tell yourself one thing when you started this entrepreneurial journey, what would it be?
It's all gonna work out. I think we all get really crazy. I wish could go back to 16 years ago and just look at myself and be like, listen, it is all gonna work out. You're gonna make the amount of money you want to make. You're gonna work the kinds of things you want to make. You're going to make impact in a way you don't even realize you're gonna make impact. Like it is all gonna work out. And just kind of give myself that peace so I wasn't like anxious every piece of the way to get to wherever I was trying to go, right?
Yeah, because in the beginning, I mean, any client lead, anything, you're jumping on it like you're starving, right? You're like, oh my God, what if this doesn't work out? Please sign up. Please work with me. I'm really awesome. Please, please, please. It's like
Yeah.
if you could go back and tell yourself, you got this. It's all going to work out. I really like this. So let's talk a little bit about your business. Let's jump right in. You've been doing this for 16 years. You have a course, you have a mastermind design suite. Let's talk a little bit about what you do and how you sell it and how you have time for all these different endeavors that you have.
Yeah. So the first piece you should know is that I was a practitioner first turned educator. So, which is kind of crazy because I was actually an educator first, then a practitioner, and then an educator again. So I taught at the University of Minnesota design. Then I started my own design business and I got in this very niche field of, as you said, surface pattern design, my quilting fabric designer, that's 100% cotton fabrics, and crafting design. And I found I was making quadruple what most designers are making. The average income coming out of design school is maybe $50,000 a year if you're lucky. So $50,000 to $55,000 a year. That's what designers make. And I was making a lot more than that, a lot sooner than everybody else. And even as a creative director, and I was making a lot more even then, I was getting contracts for people between $70,000 and $80,000 to come work with us. So we were even getting contracts for people for more than what the industry standard is. Once people started kind of figuring out a little bit, like, wait, like she makes a lot of money. Like, how do you do this? That's when I started a program because there was just such a clear gap in the market. Everybody was teaching design. No one was teaching design business. And I realized that I understood a lot of things about business that were very clear cut to me that others didn't. And business is different on a lot of different realms. Like the way I run my design suite program and that business, completely different. Distribution methods, completely different than when I was a practitioner. And so I realized if I could teach these really simple algorithms and methods and step-by-step processes, that people would start making money. And we actually have something in place where within the first 6 weeks of the program, you should have everything ready to go so that you should start making sales within the first 12 weeks. And so it's just this crazy thing that we kind of put in place and took some time to build. So I love business, but business as a designer is totally different than business than even as a design mastermind and educator that I currently have, that company.
I find this a lot too. What you said totally resonated with me because I am a coach for freelancers. And you can learn to freelance any which way you want online. Just like I'm sure you can watch YouTube videos on quilting and crafting and whatever. But to run the business and to run it successfully takes this aspect of business strategy that not everyone knows or understands or even recognizes as something they need to learn.
Well, it's invisible too in the design world.
Mm-hmm.
It's very invisible because you won't hear it being taught. As a former university professor, I can tell you we did not teach the things that we teach in our program because it didn't, first of all, it didn't exist to some degree. And second of all, because it's invisible. So what we see is fabric designers who have licensing contracts. So we all think we want licensing contracts. That's how we're going to make money. The moment I unveil how much money designers make from licensing contracts, people are like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, there's no money in that. You guys all think it's fantastic because you see it on social media. And so whatever's like visible to everyone, that's how they think everyone's making money. And it's just a falsehood.
So can you clarify for us what it is license contract is? I think what you're
Yeah.
talking about,
So it's
and I could be. Oh,
commissions, right?
oh,
Royalty and
okay.
commissions. So like if I sign a deal with a fabric manufacturer, my current fabric manufacturer is Riley Blake, and I produce a line for them every year. I get a commission from them for all the product that's produced. This is pretty much industry standard in the design world. So you're getting a royalty or commission based on whatever products you've made. Some companies like doing a flat fee. So they'll just do like a baseline flat fee of like $5,000, like a consult, right? But it's in design instead, right? So $5,000 for a design, right? Or $10,000 for a design, or royalty base, which a lot of designers, most designers like because it shows like however much product they produce, you're going to get a piece of that, right? So that's pretty industry standard. The problem is those contracts are hard to get. They're far and few between, and it's what everybody sees. So they all want a contract with maybe in-house, whatever Target has going on, right? Or they want with a notebook or a journaling company or with a fabric manufacturer. And the truth is there's just not that many jobs like that.
Yeah, I can imagine, right? Because Target only has so much space in their store. I mean, or just in general, like when you think about how many designers or crafters there are out there trying to get with the big names, I mean, you're sure to, it's like when you're trying to get into Harvard or something. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe that's a bad analogy,
it's tough.
but
It's totally possible, but it's tough. And most people try to do it in the first 6 months of being a designer, which is not the time to do it.
so tell us a little bit more. Go in depth about your business and how it stands now with your mastermind design suite. You've got the design boot camp. You even have a course. Tell us for those interested, and even let's go into a little bit about like how you teach people to take it from hobby to something that creates income.
Yeah. So the current program we have right now, first of all, we haven't quite hit it yet. We're about to hit 3 years, and it has evolved like literally every year to, when I first started, it was like, okay, I'm going to teach you design. And they'd meet with me like a regular coaching program, like once a week they'd come. I'd critique I don't ever think of it as coaching because in design it's critiquing. So they're bringing their artwork. I'm going through their artwork, making sure it's beautiful, it's correct, giving them lessons on hierarchy and color and all of that good stuff, and making sure it's ready for production. So as I'm digging into this and I'm coaching or critiquing people, they're also asking for business advice. Like, Carina, where should I go? What shop should I look at? What platform should I'm like, oh, you should go here and you should go here and you should go here. Anyway, so it turns into like, that's the thing everybody doesn't know how to do. And so like, that's what I end up teaching. And I'm like teaching them all these business processes, and you guys should be doing this. And this is how you hire a VA. And this is how, it's like they had no clue, how to do that piece of it. So it turned into, we now have a 6-month and a 12-month program. And it basically, the 6-month and the 12-month, they come with 17 courses. Like, so we created all this coursework. And in fact, we're right in the middle of reworking all of it into 15 weeks. It's all going to be academically based. So that means it's like semester long program, because I think the world of online is kind of the wild, wild west. You have no idea how much information they're giving you. And so the only way we found for people to understand, really, this is how much information we're giving you, is to set it up like an academic university. So they know that this course is 15 weeks long. It has tests, it has projects, it has quizzes in it, just like an academic program, so that they know that these 17 courses, or however much we give them, is fully like sorted out, right? Like you're going to get a
Mm.
lot out of it. And so they get 17 courses, and then we have weekly meetings with Mastermind, and these range anywhere from we do expert interviews to critiques to learning labs where we're in the software dealing with stuff to business coaching. So we kind of mix it up. And then we have something called squads, and those are the members meet together. So we have a moderator or a coach hanging out with them, but they are talking to each other, talking about wins, what's working, what's not working. Because the thing is, the industry changes, right? Even in the last 4 years, as we've seen past the pandemic, the industry changes. So it's important for us to get up-to-date information. And what we find is by having 200 people or more talking about what they're seeing on this platform, this platform, this platform, there's an overview of what we see are going on in all the online platforms. So it's like overarching information that everybody is getting.
I love that concept. And there was someone I interviewed, Jess Glazer DeRose, I want to say is her name. And she had a similar structure with her business, with having like not squads, she didn't call them squads, but she had another moderator or coach there who helped people. And it's really a way to grow your business, which is like life goals for me, so that you're not constantly involved in every single little aspect, which I like. I noticed for you, your marketing consists of you're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, you even have a YouTube channel. Which platform do you think has the most success in finding clients for your specific niche?
Well, I will say this. So, as a designer, YouTube by far is the best. Like, if you're listening to this and you're a designer, you should be on YouTube. Instagram is crap for you. I'm just going to tell you that right now. So, YouTube is like, because you're a crafter or you're a fabric designer or whatever, like showing tutorials of what you do, those people are invested in watching a process. So, YouTube is by far the best. We are still figuring it out for Design Suite. We're not totally sure exactly the best place for coaching programs yet. It's still in development. I've noticed a lot of people are in a lot of places. So what we found is we're just on all of them, and we're kind of watching and seeing how people come in. Right now, it kind of seems like Facebook actually is probably the best, but it's still a little bit tricky because we find people are jumping around all the time. I don't think LinkedIn is quite where it is for us, but I'm not 100% sure YouTube is either. So that's why I'm going to default to Facebook.
Do you use ads all, paid ads, or
Oh,
is it all
yes.
organic? Oh, yeah.
Yes, it
Okay.
is all ads. Yeah. Yeah. We spend a
What
lot.
advice do you have for women who are looking at doing ads in the social spheres?
When you first start, really set a pretty low budget. I would say about $500 to run whatever first event you're going to do. And I would really recommend it be an event of some sort or a tripwire or something, because just running ads randomly, evergreen, you're not going to get the results you think you are going to get. You need to run it to something and see if that works. If it works, which is exactly what I did, I ran, I think it was $700. It totally worked. We made $10,000 on that first run. So when that worked, we did it again a month later to test to see if it was a fluke, right? It's the exact same thing, worked exactly the same way. So then that's when we upped the ad budget. So the moment we saw this one worked, we upped the ad budget and then we ran it again. Most people don't spend enough time testing. If something doesn't work, and we actually just tested barely something last week, and it was like a new webinar on AI. We tested it and it worked okay. Like it was just like, I don't know if it worked as good as this other funnel over here. So we're constantly testing funnels to see what is really going to work the best. And I think a lot of people, they do it once or twice and then they just give up. That's probably the wrong way to be thinking about it.
So what do you mean by event? Do you mean like a sale or an actual event of like, hey, this masterclass, or I'm going to teach you this technique or whatever?
Yeah. So for us, it's Design Bootcamp. You kind of mentioned it. So Design Bootcamp is the only way to come into our program. We do not let anyone who has not come into a Design Bootcamp come into our program. There's a reason for that. We use Design Bootcamp as a filter. So Design Bootcamp is an event where we actually have one. We have a couple happening in April, and then we won't have one for a while, right? So it's like we'll have it. and people will come into it. It's a paid event, so we know they're qualified. They're people who are going to pay for education. That particular boot camp is like a challenge, like people do like the 5-day challenge. That's kind of what ours does, except for we actually teach in ours. Like we give a lot of strategy. We've heard of people coming out of boot camp and literally going and doing what we've told them to do and start making money. Like it's insane. So we really teach in boot camp. Those that really want more education, more in depth, they want to know what shops are going best, they want inside scoop, they want industry information, they come into our mastermind program. And the reason we don't let people outside the program come in is outside of boot camp come in, which is, by the way, only $27. The reason we don't is because we find that they're all over the place. There are people who are like not sure if they want to do physical products or if they want to start this over here or they want to, and we like to really narrow them down, say, this is what we actually teach. If you do not like this or you don't want to do this, we are not for you. And so we just filter out and only get the ones that really are meant to come into a program like ours.
And it, of course, helps you see a better success rate, because you're going to have the people who you know are invested and who are probably going to follow through on everything. And I know as a coach, sometimes you end up with people who stop showing up or, leave their camera off and just sit there and you're like, are they even listening?
Yeah, free challenges, we don't do those. Like people swear by free challenges. I think they're great. I see like 2,000 people go into those. We will have 30 people show up, but our conversion rate will be 50%. So it really depends. And, I'll see the same amount. Someone will only, convert 15 people from a 2,000 and they're like, they get a 5% or a 0.5% conversion or whatever. And I'm like, I would much rather really teach to a very small number of people and teach them very well and convert the right ones in and convert a large number of them than have 2,000 people get all of my very valuable information. They were unwilling to spend if they are not willing to spend $27, I'm not sure that they're willing to spend. We have a very high ticket item to come in and do what we do. So I just don't want to give that information out for free. I'm like, you got to put some money on the table in order to get this information.
So quickly tell me, what does your boot camp look like?
So it's 5 days. Right now it's in an evergreen setup, right? So it's got a funnel going to it, but we also do lives, and that's our free gift. You can go to the evergreen, you get 10 days to watch it. 5 workshops. We actually have 2 illustrator workshops that are always evergreen in there for free as well. But they get 5 days to watch the 5 hours of workshop. Every day is like, we just dig into strategy. I talk about formulas that I personally use to become a great designer. We do some mindset work. There's definitely some of that. But right now it's on evergreen, and then we do a live. And if you've been to an evergreen in the last 2 months, we invite you to the live. And so you can come do it again. And it's great because you can come ask questions, and it's really great. The people who do it the second time, especially if they haven't come into the program, it's really helpful for them because they kind of get a lot more clarity about whether it's for them or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea. And like the funnel too. Because I'm thinking of doing an accelerator and I was trying to think of how to do that. Now you've just given me an idea to like take the parts of my course, the modules, and just funnel them every week. And then that's the amount of time they get it for. I like that. Thanks for that inspiration. I'll think about it. So let's talk a little bit about your business and personal life, right? We were talking about this off air and it's really interesting, everyone. So listen and pay attention if you haven't been. How do you manage your business and personal life with your husband and your children?
Well, this is like such a tricky thing because I mentioned off air that 2 years ago, we retired my husband. And my husband's an attorney. At the time, he was in sales, doing some sales stuff because he had kind of decided he hated attorney work. He is technically our in-house attorney. Like, so he'll kind of check over contracts and all that good stuff. But he just didn't really love it. And it was a hard decision because, first of all, we were successful so fast in the mastermind program that we built. But second of all, like we had a metric, and the metric was I had to make his entire salary in a single week. And when we did that, it was like, why are you working? We have no idea why you're working. We have 3 kids, and our oldest is autistic, and she still hadn't really truly learned to drive. It was very problematic because we really were in a place where we're like, we need this one to drive so that the next one coming up will also drive. And just like our kids are at 3 different schools and she was in college, and it was just like this whole thing. So He like it was great timing because he stopped working and then he just spent all his time teaching her how to drive. So like it was like he drove the other two around to everything they needed to do and then taught her how to drive. Now she drives and she's great. And in the midst of that, also taught our now 16-year-old how to drive so that she's driving and she's good. So it's really interesting because now actually he has a lot more time, right? Like so at the beginning it was like we desperately need someone to be at home managing all the house stuff that's going on. And now we only have one kid that needs to be driven a million places. The older kids, they do still have a lot of stuff going on. But we find that he ends up managing just like all the household things. We have a family calendar and he's running everyone to their orthodontist appointments, right? It's like all of these things. That being said, he does have a lot of free time because it used to be that I used to do all those things and run my business. And now he does those things and doesn't run any kind of business whatsoever. So it can be a little tricky. And I'm going to say, especially as a woman, there is, I don't know how to get away from it, but a little bit of resentment sometimes because he doesn't really cook. He's not a cooker. He does clean. He's not much of a cooker. And I've had to take back the cooking because otherwise it was eating out every night. So it's like kind of figuring out because it's like you're making it up from scratch almost like because it's not really true traditional roles. Like he's the driver. We still have a cleaner that comes to the house. So he's not doing all the cleaning. He does a lot of cleaning. But he's not cooking. He's definitely like, oh my gosh, I had to relearn how to pack lunches this week because he's out of town. He's actually on a sailing trip. And I was like, I have no idea what he puts in the lunches. And the kids are now used to his lunch style. And so I had to relearn that. So it's been interesting.
You talked a little bit about like the resentment. What about, did you ever feel a little bit guilty? Because I know mothers struggle with that. Like, oh, I'm missing out on this time. And like you said before, you were doing everything and you were running the business at the same time. Now you're not just running the business, right? But I think you've definitely scaled to a point where you're more running the business if he's taking over a lot of the home stuff. So do you ever feel guilty like, oh, now I'm not seeing my children as much? Or is
No,
that not the case?
I think I'm like maybe the other case scenario because I really don't feel guilty about it all. And I'll tell you why. Part of it is because when I get off work at the end of the day, I spend all my time with the kids once I'm done with work. So like my youngest and I, we have like our nighttime routine that we're doing together and what we're reading together and hanging out and doing. The older girls, like we're going to lunch on the weekends together or we're going like, yeah. So I don't feel guilty because I actually think I get more time with them because instead, like I get to like, uh, so I think this is the other thing. Before this, we both worked, right? But I was the stay-at-home mom while I worked, which meant that I was driving everyone around. So the quality of time that I had with people was actually very poor, right? It was just like getting people to their places. Now my quality of time with the kids is much higher because I can get my work done very quickly during the day. Like I get like more solid time, so I accomplish more. And so because of that, my nighttime with them is much more fun. Like last night, we took two of the kids. I'm part of a church group and they were playing fugitive night games and I was one of the moms in charge. So like I was hanging out with my kids all night long with all their friends playing fugitive, right? I think that if you can get it down right, the quality of time actually becomes better and you wouldn't feel more guilty for that.
Yeah, I always have wondered about that because it's just not something that's our situation right now. Like my husband and I both work, but I'm definitely the one that's more during the day, hands-on with the kids. I'm the one driving them around. I'm the one that ends my day in an hour from now, 3 o'clock, and then I
Mhm.
don't, do any more work. So I was just wondering because I remember when I had my second born, we timed it so that I took off time for my business in the beginning, and then my husband took his 2 month paternity leave, and I went back to running my business. And I remember at times like getting like frustrated or feeling guilty that I wasn't the one spending, but at the same time loving my business. So it was like one of those like
It's,
weird
I think it's
dichotomies.
I think it's season because your child was little and a baby,
Yes,
right?
true.
So I think that my kids are older now, and I think I would feel differently, right? If they were small, but I got that time when they were small for the most part. And so I can totally see why you were feeling a little bit of guilt or maybe resentment, like if you wanted some of that time, but you were still loving your business. Cause I think we feel both of those things versus I have older kids now. I have a 20, 16, and 11-year-old. And so they have their own lives, right? So
Yeah.
that's a little different. So I think it's the season that you were in.
Yeah. You might make a very, very good point. Right. Yes. So what are some, oh, you said you have a story off air. Do you have that
Oh,
story? I want
oh
to,
my
I want to hear
gosh.
that
Yeah.
story.
Okay. This is a really great story because here's the thing. If you are thinking about retiring your husband, but retiring him to work in your business, this goes very sour for some people. It goes very
Mm.
well for others, right? I'm going to tell you I'm one of the sour ones. Okay. So you guys will like this story. So my husband quit his job and I thought, okay, this will be great. He can help us in our business. He can come help us do some marketing or sales or something so that I could do less, right? So he worked for us for about, I think he had about 6 weeks in. And at the time, half of my team was overseas and the other ones had other jobs. So they were all doing it part time. And in particular, I had one, my social media manager, who had to go into her job at 8 o'clock, plus was pregnant with a new baby. And she needed to do it at 6 a.m. And my internationals, 6 a.m. is like end of the day for them. So they were like, that's perfect, right? I get up at 5 a.m., so it was no big deal to me. So we had 6 a.m. meetings, and my husband is a night owl. So we have
I
6
do.
a.m. meetings. Yeah, we have 6 a.m. meetings. We're like chugging away. We have a lot of stuff going on. It's like super duper crazy. And I could already tell like he was really struggling because he didn't understand the full business and he just like he clearly wasn't very passionate about it because he didn't care about design. He walks into my office at 6 a.m. one day, like before the meeting starts, and looks at me and goes, I can't do these 6 a.m. meetings, Carina, anymore. And I said, then you're fired. I was just like, I mean, if any other of my teammates said this to me, I would be like, you're like, if you can't come to meetings, like this is the only meeting that we do every week. I was like, this is the only one that we have to do. I said, you're fired. And he looked at me, goes, okay, great. Goes upstairs, goes back to bed. Right. And my team always laughs. And actually, Design Suite, all our members know this story too, because Josh will come in and he'll do like squad meetings once in a while when we need like an extra person. The women love it, like because Josh will always tell all sorts of stories about what's going on with us. And so he'll sometimes like come in and be like, oh, I'll run this moderating. They'll be like, yes, Josh is going to come to a mod. But it's like, he loves telling the story of how he got terminated from our company. But like clearly, obviously, he wanted to be terminated from the company. Like he was still in his jammies when he came down and said, I can't come to 6 a.m. meetings. And he knew I was going to fire him. So there you go.
You know, I resonate with that because that would be my husband. Do you know, like I watch the kids unless I'm like super sick or anything. Every weekday morning, I'm the one that's up at like 5:36. I'm the one doing the lunches. I'm getting them breakfast because he is not a morning person at all. But on the flip side, when the kids are sick and they're up multiple times during the night, he's the one getting up with them. Because I
Well,
know if I don't have my sleep, mama is a disaster and doesn't get any work done the next day. So he stays up and he does that. But if I had 6 a.m. meetings, my God, like our relationship would deteriorate because he could
yeah.
not do that. No way.
I just, when we do, by the way, we do not have 6 a.m. meetings anymore. But in the early stages of the business, we were kind of at a loss because we just needed people. We just needed bodies to help us do what we needed to do to get things really going. So we didn't have a ton of choices. And I was still kind of like, we're still figuring out the balance of who's staying home, who's working,
Mm.
all of that good stuff. So it was a little bit tricky. That being said, Josh is a night owl. And one of the best things about him is that now that we have teenagers, we have kids who are out really late. So
Mm.
I go to bed early and he's the one up with kids.
Mm.
So it does end up working out. And it's worked okay for us. I am ready to get back to a synergy where like our family is more on the same timeline. Everybody's going to bed at the same time. And I think that's just the teenagers leaving for
Yeah.
college finally and moving out of the house.
Yeah, we've already talked about that. My husband and I am like, you're gonna stay up when the kids are like to see if they're past curfew, right? He's like, oh yeah, I'll be up anyway. I'm like, great. I don't think we'll ever be on the same timeline in our because he's just such a night owl and I'm just so not. But I'm so thankful for that. I can already see that coming. So how do you like have not just managing that personal time with the business, but also some time management techniques that you think you can share with fellow women entrepreneurs who are trying to maintain that personal life that they care about so much, whether with families or even if they're by themselves and they want to be with friends, but they have this business they're trying to grow.
Mhm.
How do you how do you balance that? But more importantly, what's some advice you can give for time management?
Yeah. So it's easier now, right? Because I have a stay-at-home dad. But 2 years ago, I didn't. And before that, I certainly didn't. So for 14 years of my business, and I did relatively well financially, but I had to do it what I call in the crevices of my life. My oldest daughter, as I mentioned, is autistic. I had to drive her an hour away for school every day. Like there was specific times. So the first thing is when my kids were really little, everybody went to bed at 7 p.m. and I worked from 7 p.m. to midnight. Those were my five like straight through hours. So I need blocks of time. I like it kind of I struggle with not. And then I would take whenever I could like an hour or two here when my kids were watching a movie or something else, right? So that was one way I did it. Then I got to the point where the kids, there was still only one at home and two were in school. So then I was like, okay, how do I utilize school time? Right. So I'm not up so late and figuring that out. So I moved to a 5 a.m. schedule and I worked from 5 a.m. to 7. And then I was on kid duty from 7 to 9. Okay. And then I still had one at home. I did finally get him into preschool, which helped a little bit. I could get a little section of time there. But even while he was home with me, I basically worked with him at home. And that was rough. It was just rough. I worked at the kitchen table. I worked at, in front of the TV. I worked in my bed with him while we were like playing with toys and stuff. I set up play dates. I had exchanges with other moms. Like I just did everything I could to get to that point. And then once again, I did work a little bit during the day as much as I could. And then I would put in 2 hours at night. So kids would be in bed by 8, 8:30, or my husband would take over and I'd work from 8 to 10. And it sounds crazy because it is. And it's the only way I knew to be a stay-at-home mom and also run a business. You might have a better way than me. Maybe you decide you want to put your kids into daycare or any of those other things. I have zero judgment about that. For me, I just wanted to be with my kids, and so I was willing to let them kind of see me juggle it. Was it frustrating? Yes, it was. I will also say my husband almost always took the kids all day on Saturdays, and I worked a full day on Saturdays. So that's the other thing I did.
Hmm.
Was that even helpful? Telling you like it's crazy. And the reason it's crazy is because your kids are little, you want to enjoy them, you still want to be part of it. So how do you get both of those things? It's not going to feel balanced, it's going to feel crazy, but it's also going to feel like this is the way I feel about it. I was in whatever I was doing in that moment. I was very present. So if I'm playing with the kids, I'm very, very present. If I'm working on my business, I was very, very present, right? Like, so I just like sectioned it off, like from 5 to 7. I got more work done, I think, than the average 8-hour person in those 2 hours because I knew that was my only quiet time. Right. So, like, I was just insane and you prioritize better. That's the other thing. I see people who have an 8-hour workday, they get hardly anything done because they don't even know what the priorities are. If you know that the bottom line is the money and you've got to get it done. And I was a creative director of another company where I have to drive down for a few hours of meetings every single week. And I would come back and then I would run my entire design team from home. Um, you have to be on top of it. Like from 5 to 7, it was like emails out, delegation, making sure everybody's getting to where they need to go. And then for me, design is a little bit, I can do it with white noise. So I do the design time during the day when I was with kids, right? But anything that required like brain work, it was like before and after hours.
I feel you. I have a son who's 2 right now. And I get it. I get it. He is in daycare though, 2 days a week, and he's with my mom 1 day a week because I started off like you. I was like, I'm going to be this stay-at-home mom who's also working on off hours, right? And it was not for me. And not to say like I still do kind of do what you're doing. Like, so when I have my son home with me those days, I am working in the morning, I'm working at night. Sometimes even the days that he's out, I'm working at night, right? But for me, I wanted to have more time where I could do calls, where I could participate in things like this, like a podcast, or not that podcasting was big back then, but like just do more of this. And I couldn't do that. Whereas like your business might be a little bit different because with the like hands-on stuff. You're not maybe doing as many calls. But I love the honesty with that because do you think that your business though did not grow as quickly during those times and you had to be okay with the slower growth?
Yep. I think that's the number one thing there. I mean, notice that I'm talking about, so I was multiple six figures for 13 years and I'm multi-million now in the last 2 years. Notice the ages of my children.
Yes.
20, 16, 11. So I think there is a ton here in terms of like, I hear people like lamenting and their children are really little. And I'm like, you know what? Seasons, guys, seasons. I'm in a season where I have the ability to work longer hours, grow things, scale things. I'm also just far more experienced, right? Like all of those years of figuring out what I was doing, I'm just far more experienced. Now I can throw together a funnel in 2 seconds flat, right? So I know what I'm doing more. But I think there's a lot to be said about just simply like the season of your life. Like you can't put in the hours. I do think, I hear all the time, like people are like, I want it to be like, I make so much cash and I don't work very many hours. I'm like, okay, I think that's all good and fine. But the beginning, your business needs your time. That's
Yeah.
what it needs.
Yeah. And I feel like I know when my daughter finally, there's a larger age difference between my daughter and my son. When she was finally in kindergarten, and I had 5 days a week from like 9 to 3, my God, my business was like, like it was great. And then I had my son, and I went right back to square one. And I have to constantly remind myself, like, this is a time where he is young, and your business is not going to go at the pace you want it to. Because I wanted to grow quickly. Of course I do. Of course I wanted to go faster and do more and do bigger things. And there's a lot of stuff holding me back from that. Not only his age, but like when he gets sick, I'm the one that has to take that time off from work, and I'm the one that stays home, and I'm the one that has to cancel things. I just had to cancel an event on Monday because he was so sick, right? So it's like I have to be okay with that, as frustrating as it is, and come to some kind of grace and acceptance over it.
And
You
he's
mentioned
two, right? He's
yes,
two.
yes.
And so you really do have to watch him when he's sick. I'm just going to say this. So my husband's gone. He's been gone for about 5 days. He's going to be gone for 10. And so I'm a single mom right now. So I've just been barely re-experiencing this. My son was also sick this week. The difference is he's 11. So I still got in a full day of work.
Oh, let me tell you, yesterday my daughter homesick. She's almost 8. I was like, this is the best day ever. My son was with my mom, and I was like, it was our short day too. We have short days once a week here. And I was like, oh my God, I don't have to pick her up at 1. She's watching movies, she's reading, she's doing crafts. I was like, I got so much work done. I was like, maybe I should have her be sick more often.
I
Because then
know.
I don't have to drop her off. Then I don't have to pick her up. Then I don't have to take her to activities. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't,
But don't
right?
you
But like,
see
you're
the
like, wow.
seasons? You see it
Yeah.
as seasons, right? Because you can see it even between your daughter and your son. So
Yes.
I think if anyone is listening and they're currently going through this, it's always a not yet. Don't say it's like a not ever. This is like a season in your life.
Oh, say that again.
It's
It's
not
not ever. It's a
it's
not
not a
yet.
never, it's a not yet. Like, not yet can I do these things, like it's coming. It is so coming for you. And you're going to be able to do everything you want in your business, and you're going to have so much time in it to do everything you want. But this very second in time when your children are small, or the other thing I see is aging parents, like people who become
Yes.
caretakers for their aging parents. That's the other thing on the other round. But just know that it's a season.
Yeah. I love this. I love all this great advice because I think so many of us struggle with this as women entrepreneurs and get so frustrated and feel held back. But we need to recognize this acceptance of the seasons that we're in. I want to go and switch topics here briefly because I want to talk about hiring because you talked about your 6 a.m. meetings. You talked about having people internationally. You talked about having people on your team who also have full-time jobs. What mistakes and challenges have you had when hiring?
I've always hired too fast. I think that's my number one problem. I hire way too fast. It's because I have a very trusting personality. Like I'm just like, you look like you're right. You're saying you do these things. You seem like you have the experience. Let's go for it. Right. And I think the other thing is one of my best hires ever 3 years ago at the very beginning of this whole journey is someone who I trust, and she's international. She was my VA, turned into my executive assistant, now is our operations lead. Like she is like up in the ranks. She knows everything about the company. She knows everything about where. So I had such a great experience hiring this one person who I hired off Upwork of all places. Like
Oh, wow.
it wasn't even, it was just this amazing experience where I hired someone who ended up being, she's like my mini me, like she's kind of my integrator. She knows everything that's going on. And so I had such a great experience doing that, that as I've hired along the way, I just kept thinking, just going to get more crystals. I'm going to get more of this particular person. And you don't, right? Like it was like a
Mm.
fluke in time, like that I got this one person. And so we fire and we hire a lot. We hire and we fire. And, I will say at the beginning when I fired people, I like would cry after the call, like, cause I would just be like, oh, I can't believe I had to do that. That felt so hard. I don't know if it's the amount that we have to do it now, like as we kind of figure things out, but I feel a little hardened from it at this point. And for me, it's a bless and release because I find that they're just not a great fit for what we're trying to do. And I found when I held on to people, and I would hold on to people for way too long, they would totally destroy company culture in a very short amount of time. And so what I found was it wasn't just that I was hardened, but it was like I have to protect everybody else who is staying. So if this one person is doing things to rouse everybody else out or causes a problem, then they cannot stay because I need everybody else to stay and be good. And it was crazy stuff. Like that's the thing about it. Like, I hired people who weren't great for the job because they just couldn't keep up with our fast-paced culture. In order to scale from 0 to multiple million in as short of a time as we have, you have to have good people on board, which meant that someone who came with us, at 0 to 6 months, they might not be qualified at the 6-month mark because we had already grown so fast. Does that make sense? So if they
Yes.
couldn't grow as fast as we were growing, they couldn't stay. And that's a really unfortunate thing because we've had lots and lots of good people. We also had people who just company culture wise, and now we care about company culture fit more than we do actually about qualifications. They have to fit well with our company culture because we found there were people who were toxic in ways we didn't realize that they were going to be toxic. They kind of like pushed some of the needles and stuff. And we're like, no, 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 we're too small of a company and too fast growing as a company to have people who kind of push a lot of other people's buttons. Like that just doesn't work either.
Just imagining like the emails. That's usually what pushes my button. When I get some kind of email, I'm like,
Yeah.
you're too prickly. You're making me upset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you lay out like 3 action steps that you took to grow your business from 6 figures to 7?
Okay. I think the number one thing is not a very exciting thing, but it's grow ad spend, like ad spend, ad spend, ad spend, ad spend. Number 2, do what your members are asking you to do. So my members, I started without a community, asked for a written community. I made one for them. They loved it. They asked for the squad meetings. They actually named it squad meetings. I had a big meeting and I just said, you guys keep asking, you want to meet each other and get together. And they're like, yeah. So I was like, fine, we'll do it. What do you guys want to call it? And I gave them they voted and named it and all that other good stuff. So do what your members ask you to do, because very often, if enough of them are asking for it, it will make your program better. It'll elevate
Mm.
it. And that's what's happened. Our program has elevated, elevated, elevated because the members keep asking us, to do things. And we're like, yeah, we'll do that. You're struggling in Illustrator. Let's have something called Learning Labs. So you can come and just get Illustrator help, you know? So it's like, just do what your members ask you to do. That really helps. And then, to grow your business, the biggest thing you can do if you're CEO of your company is work on yourself. That's been the hardest thing for me, is kind of realizing and seeing all my own mistakes, my personal stuff come in, my own flaws, my own insecurities come in. You have to really work on yourself. And when I say work on yourself, you have to realize like where you really suck. And there are a lot of things I really suck at that I'm constantly having to work on.
Like what?
I think leadership's hard for me. I think it really is. I think the reason you hear me hiring and firing so fast and doing all of this is because I haven't gotten to place where I'm like, I lead exactly the way I feel compelled to want to lead, because I'm such a giver, but I also have to be like, it's okay to give things away and just let other people take control of it and run with it. I don't think I'm necessarily controlling, but I definitely like want to make sure everyone's good all the time. I'm a little bit of a people pleaser that way. I'm like, are you good? Like, do you need help with that? Instead of just being like, you know what, you're big girl. Maybe you should just like take that over and see how it goes.
Right. I have a problem connecting. Like some people want that personal connection. They want to really feel that who they're working for cares about them. Of course, I care about them, but I'm very like task oriented, and I love it when I have people on my team who can just do what I say and it just gets done. It's like, whew, so nice, right?
Yeah.
But then I forget the connecting aspect. I don't do as much of that.
I almost think I do too much connecting. Like I'm so worried about what everybody else is doing and how they're doing it and if they need my help and what's going on with their kids. And like, so I almost have to take a step back and be like, okay, you know what? It's okay. Like you just go and do that thing. Right. So
I need to give you a little bit of me, and you need to give me a little bit of you, and then maybe
yeah.
we'll get that good leadership going here.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, this has been great. So, what advice do you think you have for other women as they grow their business, and why do you think some women hit roadblocks when scaling?
Well, okay. I think the hardest thing is that I think there's natural scaling. And then I think there's like you have a business and you're like, I just want it to be much bigger, like I want to make more money. And I will say a lot of what we did was natural scaling. Like we had to scale because the people kept coming in and buying. Does that make sense? And sometimes I feel like it's really forced. And I think I felt that way even in my design business. Like I was like, let's open more platforms, let's more, whatever, in order to grow it and make it bigger. And it did. It grew and it became bigger, right? But it was also there was a huge cost involved in that. With the program, it's been different. It's felt very natural. And I would say in the last, I would even say a few months, we've noticed it kind of like, it's kind of evened out. And I was like, we've got to scale this. We've got to scale this. And I found that it's very difficult. We're having a lot of trouble like getting to the next level, which is we want to hit the 8-figure level, right? And so it's like you want to hit the 8-figure level and we're like, oh, it doesn't feel natural. It feels a little hard. And when I say a little hard, I mean like it's just not like it's not going. It's not going the way we want it to go. And so I think in this situation, which many of you guys are in, like where you're like, I'm stuck right here, it's very often not completely your own fault, right? You don't have the distribution methods that is needed. Maybe your market is too small and you can't make it any bigger than it currently is. Maybe you haven't thought big enough to the next level. And I will tell you that's the thing we've actually been working on for the last 2 years is the next level, which will take us at least 3 more years to implement. And so there's a time thing that people don't pay attention to. We know the next level for us, and we can't even talk about it because government's involved and all of that other stuff. But like we knew it was going to take us a long time. It's going to be the next 3 years before we can maybe announce things in the next year, but like it's really tough. And so you always have to be thinking so much bigger than where you currently are at in order to get to that next level.
I like that advice a lot. I think also in terms of scaling, where a lot of people run into issues is definitely around mindset. And you kind of touched on that. What advice would you have for women when they've got that mindset kind of blocking them and saying, like, who am I to take this to the next level? Oh, but I really want to. But am I the right person for this? Right? You know what I'm saying? And you probably deal with this with your members too, where they're like, oh, I love doing this, but could I really do this as a business or something like that? Right?
Yeah.
What advice do you have?
I think your identity is tied to your actions. Always. I think that's the easiest thing. And I have a great story for this. I actually tell this in design boot camp, but I had a designer who came to me who said, hey, Carina, I really don't feel like I'm a designer. I'm like, really? Why? And she was like, I don't know. I just don't feel like it. I was like, I don't get this. What, like, why are we having an imposter syndrome about this? Like, and so I said to her, okay, well, tell me this. Do you feel like you are a sewer? And she would say yes. And I knew this. She quilts every single day. She's sewing every day. I was like, well, why do you feel like you're a sewer or a quilter? And she was like, well, I quilt or I sew every day. I'm a brand ambassador. I do all this stuff. And I was like, okay, awesome. I was like, do you feel like you are a mom? And I knew she had 6 kids. And she said, yes, I feel like a mom. I was like, why do you feel like a mom? She was like, well, I have to get my kids their lunches and send them off to school and all this stuff. And I said, so you parent every single day? And she said, yeah. I said, do you design every day? And she said, no. And I said, oh, interesting. And she was like, oh. And I was like, yeah. So our identities are tied to what we actually do. And I was like, if you start designing every day, it is only a matter of time before you feel like you are a designer. And, there are other things that get in the way, but I think that's step number one. Imposter syndrome comes because we're not actually doing the thing we should be doing in order to make money, to be that person. I have a story where the same thing with running. I didn't feel like a runner until I was like doing it a certain amount of time. After I'd done it for 3 months, and I could say, oh yeah, I'm a runner, right?
Right. 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 It's like when you first start working out, you're like, oh, I'm not really into fitness. I'm just going to the gym. But then when you start going consistently over many times of the year, month, whatever, you're like, oh, wait, I do like fitness, or I am someone who works out, quote unquote. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. That's such a good point. Thank you. So where can we find you? Tell us if our audience, is into crafting and designing and they want to join up and learn from you. Where can they find you?
Probably just come to carinagardner.com if you want to just come see all the stuff. Like, I don't know who exactly your audience is. So, like, if you're a crafter or if you love planning, we have like a daily planner we do in Design Suite. That's really fun. You can get off Amazon. So, you can check that all out at carinagardner.com. I'm going to give you two things. The first is if you are are an art buff or you love, just anything that has to do with business. If you want to, you can come to my recent book just came out. It's called Make Art That Sells. It's on Amazon. You can go to makeartbook.com and you can find the book. But if you don't want the book or you just want to check this out because it's totally free, is if you click on the masterclass there are 6 lessons there that you can join. It says it costs money. Do not pay the money. Use the code Make Art, put that in, and just get the class for free. It's totally fun. This particular book I wrote has a formula in it that will work for you because it works for any business, but it's very much set up for design. So just be aware of that. And it's a formula, and every chapter gives you a piece of the formula until you have the full formula at the end of the book. And every chapter is also dedicated to an artist. So if you like a little art history, we relate it to lots of different artists. So it's Vincent van Gogh and Picasso and Monet and Norman Rockwell. And it's just a fun book, along with the fact that you get this formula at the end of it. So that's fun. Use that code to get it for free. The second big ask I have, if you're listening to this and you know someone, because you are probably listening to this and you're an entrepreneur, and I don't teach entrepreneurs. Like, that's not my thing. I teach designers. So if you know of someone who's a fabulous artist, a fine artist, an amazing designer, they're really creative, have them come join a design boot camp. $27, best $27 they will have spent, I promise. It's at designsuitecourses.com/design bootcamp. We teach. I really teach in those. Okay. So you're going to learn about strategy. You're going to learn about how I got started, how I made it happen, why we have the ideology we have, and you'll learn a lot from it. So come to a design boot camp.
Love it. Oh, so great. We're going to put all of that into show notes. And thank you so much, Carina. So what is one philosophy, mantra, quote you try to run your business by?
If you can help one person, then you've done the job, right? That I went into this just being like, it's one-on-one. I'm going to impact one person's life and it's going to be worth it. Now we've impacted hundreds, if not thousands. And it has made a world of difference because you are going to have hard days in your business where you're like, I wish I didn't have this business. Why am I doing this again? And the only thing that gets you through is knowing that what you're actually doing makes a difference.
And changing lives.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have time. If you do you have one success story that's totally been like, man, this it lit you up for days?
Oh my gosh. We have so many of them. I don't know which one I want to tell you. Okay, well, I just recently did this. One of my Australians, I got on a call with her. She's been in the program for 2 years, and she was finally, okay, I think I just need to be done, Karina. I was like, I think you need to be done too. 2 years is a great amount of time. You're done. And she got on a call with me, and I had no idea. So she followed our program and our methods. And but kind of in the middle of the year, she got a couple of jobs from us through our agency that we have. that we just have her design suite. And it propelled her on this path I had no idea it had taken her on. She told me that I think her kids are in private college. She pays thousands of dollars a month in private education that she pays for with just her freelance work. Like she's like, I can't even believe it. Like if someone had told me like I am like a real designer, like I get tons of freelance work now just from talking to people and telling them I'm a designer and all this stuff. And she was like, it's insane. So I was like, this is incredible because she's one of my ones who came in and said, I just don't know if I can do this. And the only thing that convinced my husband is I told him, I'm going to go back to college for design, or I can go with Carina, who has a PhD and taught at university and now is teaching it in this 1-year program. And he said, okay, go do it. And she did. And she is a full blown designer. And we don't tell people they're going to be freelancers or they're going to work in-house somewhere, but we love it when they just find their own path based on what we've taught them.
Oh, I love that. I love that because you can't guarantee success. I mean, I even have a disclaimer in my thing that's like, I'm giving you tools, but it's up to you whether or not you take them and use them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like so satisfying to hear this story. And this kind of stories of just someone who blew it out of the water. I love it. I love it. So thank you again for joining me on the show. And if you're listening to the show right now and you found it informative, valuable, you loved learning from Carina, do us a little favor and share the show with someone who's going to be really interested in this. Maybe they're a designer, maybe they quilt, stuff like that, right? See, again, my lack of crafting knowledge not really translating here. So until next time, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm most active, or even on Instagram at the Kiri Mohan. So thank you, Carina, again. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Carrie.